Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Love Baxter podcast. I'm Adam Greenbaum, the founder of Love Baxter. I started this platform after my beloved Boston Terrier Baxter passed away suddenly in October of 2024. And to be honest, 9 months later, I'm still not doing okay with that. So I have Kelly Daugherty today here to talk to us about how I and how all of us watching this video can process these emotions and grief and give us some tools to get through it. Before we do your big intro, if you're watching this, please subscribe, leave some comments, let us know how you're feeling going through it. Check out lovebaxter.com. Thousands of resources and people and articles and to-do lists and all of that stuff about anticipatory grief, pet loss grief, and all of that. So Kelly, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So you're a social worker. You've been doing this for over 2 decades. You are the owner of this Center for Informed Grief, and you do like 5 other things. You
I do.
also wrote a book with a lot of amazing people that I have here. And we're going to talk about this today. But, for anyone who's not familiar with you, maybe you want to just, give everyone, the backstory on who you are and how we got here.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm in upstate New York and a fellow in thaleontology, which nobody knows what that means, but it's the study of death, dying, and bereavement. And my mom died when I was 14. And so that's kind of what started my journey. My dad forced me to go to a hospice grief group. But I walked into that room and my life changed. And I finally didn't feel alone in my grief. Social worker was amazing. I did a couple of groups with her, did some family counseling with another therapist. And then the social worker asked me to start volunteering with the children's programs. And that's when I knew that this is what I wanted to do with my life. And so I went to school, went to Florida State, got my master's in social work, and done a bunch of different things in my career, with some trauma, with mental health. But I'm now in private practice where I really just specialize in grief and loss because I got back to my roots, which is what I was meant to be doing. And I find meaning in my grief every single day by the work that I do. In addition, obviously, as you go through life, you experience more and more grief. Um, so I've had several pet losses that have been really challenging and difficult. And my dad died this last November. So back in new grief again, a little bit with that. Um, but I want the world to know that, they're not alone in their grief and that grief is a normal, natural experience that we're all going to go through probably multiple times in our life. I think pet loss is what we consider a disenfranchised grief, which means it's not always accepted by society, right? It's minimized, it's downplayed. You go to the Hallmark, there's maybe 2 pet loss cards, right? There's not enough out there. We don't talk about this. People just think, "Oh, you can just get another dog." And it's not so easy. It's not like that. So, I'm excited to be able to talk about this today. I know most people don't want to talk about grief and loss, but it's what I love to talk about, and it's what truly is my passion.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask the first question. The study of thanatology, did I say that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, what makes someone say, you know, I've got one life to live. It's this beautiful life, and I want to think about and study and practice in the end of it and the death, which is, the worst thing that we go through in life. What compels you to do that?
I mean, I think it's because I went through it. I experienced it. I know what it's like. I felt so lonely and isolated as a 14, almost I was right before my 15th birthday. So when I was 15, I felt like I was the only teenager going through it. And I cried myself to sleep most nights. And thankfully my dad knew that I needed help. So being able to be around other people and know that I wasn't alone just made all the difference in the world for me. And it really, it has shaped my entire life. I've learned so much about life from death, right? And the majority of people that are probably in the paleontology world, especially that are fellows, probably all have their own personal grief story, which has propelled them to this. I mean, look at what you've created because of your grief,
Sure,
right?
sure.
It's how we find meaning in our grief, right? We take something traumatic and difficult and hard, and then we're able to help other people in it. It's just full circle, in my opinion.
Wow. So, little background on me. that maybe will shape this call a little bit. So I had not a great childhood. Don't have a relationship with my parents. There's a lot of abuse there. Don't have a relationship with grandparents. So I moved out when I was 16 in high school. So for me, I've had, 3, 4 instances of death, and they were all pets. Now I've had, obviously it's not like I had a parent die because I didn't have parents in my life. When you don't have parents in your life, you typically don't have grandparents in your life. So I was obviously aware that I had grandparents, and I heard through the grapevine of cousins that they passed away. But without a relationship with them, it didn't mean a lot to me. And then, I lost my childhood cat, Boots, which was hard. When my wife and I first met, she had moved in and we had an awesome cat named Bijou who passed away maybe within the first year. And then Baxter, which was obviously just, like as you can all imagine, has wrecked me still. So it's so interesting and so hard. When I think about a 14-year-old losing her mom, as weird as it sounds, I struggle so hard to understand that. Obviously, I know the magnitude of a 14-year-old girl losing her mom. That is an unbelievable tragedy. That is a 1% thing that you wouldn't wish upon your worst enemy. But I think it's good that maybe for this conversation that I don't fully grasp that, which I'm saying not to be weird. Is it coming off weird if you're out there
No,
watching?
but
No.
what you talked about with your parents is a different type of grief, right? But when you moved out at 16, you don't have a relationship. We call that ambiguous loss. Ambiguous loss comes down to presence, right? Maybe physically here, but psychologically they're not physically in your life, but psychologically they're still here, right? So it really comes down to presence. So you had a grief experience as well. It just wasn't from a death,
Yeah.
right? And so I may not be able to relate to that just like you can't, but I think it's about how can we can understand when we have somebody that we love and they die, right? We know what that feels like. We've experienced it with pets, and grief is grief, right? We can't, like, it's hard and it sucks, and yes, you didn't go through what I went through, and that's okay though. And my dad was an alcoholic when my mom died. And it was not great. It was not great for a very long time. Thankfully, I threatened to run away. And I don't really talk about this a lot, but now that he's gone, I feel like maybe I can share a little bit more. But I wrote a letter and I said, if you don't stop drinking, I'm going to run away. And I was serious. And that was only 6 months after my mom died. And he came and stood in the doorway of my bedroom and said, I don't have a problem, but I'll stop drinking. And he did, and he didn't get help right away. Thankfully, one of our neighbors was in the AA program and she got him in, but it took 2 years. And so from the time my mom died until when he got sober, we had to build a relationship all over again because my mom did everything. She was the stay-at-home mom. She was the one that did everything. My dad just worked. He came home and got drunk. That was kind of what my dad did. And my mom was it. And so having her gone out of my life, I didn't know how to function. My dad kicked my sisters out about a month after my mom died. So I didn't even have their support. So it was not a great time.
Well, and you know what? I think, maybe this is a learning moment for anyone watching this. I almost felt compelled to say that because sort of like, and you're going to school me on this and hopefully everyone watching, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, my dog died. He lived 12 and a half years. I'm very lucky. I got 12 and a half years with him. And here I am, and sometimes it feels like it's a comparison. And I felt almost compelled to say like, you lost your mom. I didn't know about your dad recently, so I'm sorry about that as well. You've obviously lost, 3 pets that I know about. So, yeah, it was almost like, and I feel that at times where, people ask me, "Are you okay?" And this is, people who have family members pass away. And, I've learned and I've tried and we've built content around this to never say, "God, I know what you're going through," with Baxter. I never want to do that. I never want to compare
Exactly.
it. I want to just say, "Hey, I'm sorry you're going through that." But it was odd, right? Like we're filming this podcast. I'm not editing this out. I felt compelled to explain to you, like over explain to you why I was having trouble internally, which no one would have known. Uh, like with you talking about your mom, because it's like in my brain, you want to compare it to Baxter. My brain goes, oh, well, you had a 12 and a half year old dog die. Like, If you compare that to a 14-year-old losing her mom, you're a monster.
But we shouldn't compare losses, just like
I
you just
agree.
said,
I
right?
agree.
You know, what I'm a big believer, this is one of my biggest things, and this happens a lot in grief groups, right? The comparisons. And everybody feels their grief at 100%, right? It doesn't matter. There's so many circumstances that impact why we grieve and how we grieve, relationships, whatnot. And we all feel it at 100%. You know, I think about, so my mom was a neat freak. She vacuumed multiple times a day. We always said that when she died, she'd come back as a vacuum cleaner. You know, if you couldn't see the lines in the carpet, it had to be vacuumed again.
It's my
But
kind of lady, by the way. I love that. I'm a OCD weirdo, so I love to hear that.
she caved and she let me get a bunny rabbit. And Dusty, he was the best. He was housebroken, so house trained, so he ran around the house, ate a lot of wires, but he was a great little bunny. And then my mom died. And this little bunny, Dusty, used to sit in my mom's chair afterwards. He was grieving for my mom too. And then probably about a year after my mom died, Dusty got an abscess in his mouth and he died. And my dad, I think, cried more when Dusty died than at my mom's funeral, you know? And so we can't compare. Like, it impacts us, and then, different losses compound and brings other things up, it's just, I just feel that we all experience it at 100%. So don't compare, because we can't.
All right.
We
Well,
don't know.
that's our first good lesson of the day. Don't compare, which
Mhm.
I hope we walk away with 5 to 10 lessons.
Yes.
I think, I'm wearing a Boston Terrier hat. You're wearing a
Mhm.
Boston Terrier necklace. I
Mhm.
have a 15-year-old Boston Terrier upstairs. She's 15. I took her to her first physical therapy appointment yesterday, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And I felt as if they were almost talking me out of taking her there. And I was shocked by that. Um, and I think in the pet world where I come from, I owned a tech company in the veterinary space. We had 13,000 veterinary clinics that use the software. Um, I've felt the disconnect between pet care professionals and pet owners when it comes to care and grief and end of life decisions. And yesterday, seriously, was another moment where I thought, she said, "You know how old she is, right?" I said, "Yeah, I know." It was odd, and honestly, I came home and I said to my wife, we need to think about if we want to continue forward there, because that wasn't the optimism I would have hoped for Sophie's care. So I'm going to segue into your book, which I have here, and we're going to link to in the show notes and on lovebaxter.com and all of that. So you wrote one of the first chapters, and it was about PJ and Boomer. So it really meant a lot to me because I had Baxter, who was 12 and a half, and had allergies his whole life. I rescued him from a very, very bad situation when he was young, and he spent every second of his life just showing me thanks by just loving me more than anything. I like joke with my wife. If my wife showed me the love that Baxter showed me, I would be like, "You are freaking me out. Get out of here." But Baxter had this way of, he was just my security blanket in life through a lot of hard times, through big life changes, moving states, meeting my wife, starting two different companies, growing those companies, which is very isolating and hard, dealing with types of mental pain and stress I've never felt before, physical challenges. And he was the rock who never left by my side ever. I'm in my office right now at home, and you can all see a background behind me. For 6 years, I faced that way. I faced a different angle. I can't face that way because that's where his bed was. And I used to look over my monitor 100 times a day and see him there. And it is still to this day too hard for me. And by the way, after he passed away, I wasn't down here for about 6 months. I couldn't even be in this room because not seeing his bed there and not seeing him there was too hard. So I had Baxter and I had Sophie. So I actually had Sophie for a couple years before Baxter. She's still here. I can't believe she's still here. Sort of like what you said in your book. Sophie had been diagnosed with Cushing's and hyperthyroidism in 2023, and she was very sick. And we prepped for her death. So I've been prepping. I've had anticipatory grief and stress around Sophie's health for years. I mean, if you would have told me make a bet, I'm from Las Vegas, so make a bet, I would have bet we would have been saying goodbye to Sophie I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't trade places, but, sort of like what you said in your book. And, and also like what you said, and for those who haven't read it, I like kind of want to not tell you, so you have to go read it, but I'll give you some cliff notes here. So you were playing with PJ like normal 2 days before he was gone. And, if you've watched some of the other podcasts we've shot, Baxter was at the dog beach. There's a picture of it on the Love Baxter site. He was at the dog beach. We were at a Boston Terrier French Bulldog meetup in Long Beach, California. He was the craziest dog at the beach that day. I had to like pick him up because he was just playing too hard. And, he'd passed away on a Monday morning. And the Wednesday before, our vet looked me in the eyes and said, his blood work looks perfect. We beat this. Those are the exact words. So, just like for you and the reaction you just had, those words have been like burned into my brain and my chest. Perfect. We beat this. So, like the whiplash you feel from that is unbelievable. I mean, that was probably one of the happiest nights of my life because we went home after 6 months and pain and stress, tens of thousands of dollars, putting him through hell. And we said, you know what? We beat this. And he collapsed the next day. And then it was a couple days of chaos. Same thing with you. PJ went outside to go to the bathroom. You saw poop. It was the same thing for us. Baxter went out to pee. He was peeing blood. And it was hard. So that part of your story in this book, like really stuck out with me. Even you talking about, you know, putting PJ in the blanket, putting him in the basket, walking out to the veterinarian's car. We did the same thing. And I have to relive it all the time. And I have video camera footage from our front door and our living room that I watch because I'm nuts, because it's like, I just want to relive that day sometimes, which is really weird. But yeah, it was, like I said, I read your book and it really stuck out to me because I don't think it's unique. PJ was how old? What was the exact age?
He was almost 15.
Well, yeah, that's right. He was almost 15 because it was, so
PJ
Sophie is,
shared a birthday with my mom. They're both Valentine's Day's birthdays.
what are the odds of that? So that
Mhm.
make yeah, I
Isn't
mean,
that
yeah,
wild?
yeah. Some things are meant to be.
And
But
Boomer was almost 16.
I mean, so when we talk about this, and we already learned if you're watching, we don't compare. But sometimes I feel really horrible. A very close friend who's a colleague of mine, her 6-year-old golden retriever just died. 6. I mean, here I am. I had Sophie, who's still with me, over 15 years old. I had Baxter to 12 and a half. I should be so lucky. We have our cat who's 9. We have a 7-month-old Boston Terrier upstairs. The odds that he'll live to be as old as Sophie or Baxter is not great. We could do everything right, and we know every vet on earth, and we will do everything we can. The odds just might not be in our favor. So I'm kind of rambling about your book, but I also want people to understand, like, the questions I'm going to ask you. I want people to understand both the connection I felt to you when reading all of this and just sort of how I see this stuff. So on our side, on Love Baxter, I spoke with thousands of pet parents who have lost pets and asked how old, and I, obviously wanted to make sure everyone was comfortable with it. You know what I found? There were it actually scared me. There were so many more deaths that were sudden or way too early in life. Like the amount of people who even got their pets to 7 years old was shockingly low, which was odd for me because I'm like, I don't think you think about that as a pet owner. You don't think, okay, I have this new pet in my life. I'm going to have you for 6, 7 years. So I think that was hard. And, the suddenness of it, right? Like both for you and your husband still had the day to prepare. I had about 30 hours with Baxter. My wife and I took him to his favorite beach, just let him lay in the sand, listen to the waves. We took him in a cart around the neighborhood. So here I am thinking, the love of my life was ripped away from me. And you go through this, you talk to people and you realize, okay, mine's bad, yours is bad, all of these are bad. There's different
They all
degrees
suck.
of bad, and we all feel it differently. So I'm going to stop rambling, but I wanted to like set this scene here because what we're talking about today and what I want to help people with is, whether you're like a hardened person like me, who my wife spent 10 years maybe seeing cry once or twice and now has seen me cry 1,000 times, how do we how do we deal with this? Whether it's, oh, you ripped my pet was ripped away from me too soon, whether it was a whiplash situation where you're told they're great and then they're not great. No matter the circumstances, maybe we just start talking about some of the tools and some of the things that we can do just by ourselves because I've spent a lot of time in my head replaying a million things, having guilt, having regrets, and I'm still struggling with it 9 months later. And I know if you're watching this, you're probably in that same boat with me, no matter the circumstances around the death of your pet or, maybe an anticipated death of a pet. So that was the longest question and intro in YouTube history. So sorry for that, everyone. But I wanted to set the stage and ask you, what should I do? What should we do as pet owners who are struggling with this?
Well, I think, grief is hard. There's no like magic answers, right? I think people don't understand how hard grief is until you experience it, right? You can be you can think you understand, but once you're in it, it's totally different. For me, like PJ, it was PJ. I'm gonna be honest. PJ was a little asshole. He was a carrion terrier, and the majority of people that I've spoken to that have carrion terriers would agree about theirs as well. So, but he loved us. He had to be muzzled when people came over to the house, though. Kevin always said, like, if he had ever been adopted by anybody else, he probably wouldn't have lived as long as he did. They probably would have had to euthanize him early in his life because he had such an attitude, but he loved us. And so when he went so quickly, it was awful. Like I was crying myself to sleep most nights. I was angry with my friends, my colleagues because none of them seemed to give a shit. And I was so hurt and disappointed. So I started like searching, like, okay, what can I do? Right? What do I need to do? And so for me, I've made photo books for actually all of my animals that have died, that like putting together all those and like me and Kevin sitting down and coming up with all of the different names that we had for PJ. And, we did it the same with Boomer. I mean, because they don't just have one name, they have like 30
Oh, they have
nicknames.
1,000. Yeah, literally. And songs, did you have songs?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we had
And
songs.
they had we'd talk, we'd have little, accents
Yeah,
that
their
they would talk.
voices. Yeah, Sophie's upstairs, she's 15, she's got a British accent. "Daddy, fetch me some cod." 'Cause we make her fresh turkey and cod every day. "Fetch me some cod."
Exactly. So we put all of these into these books. We put all the pictures, and for me, it was really a good way because Kevin and I think grieved a little differently. He wanted to just put everything away right away. And I was like, oh, like, we are not moving anything. Stop. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so doing that was really helpful. We have my nephew, he's actually pre-vet and, he's an artist as well, and he came over 3 days after PJ died with this portrait he made of PJ, and it was, like, the most touching thing ever that we received, and he did one for Boomer as well, and so they're hanging up in our living room. I mean, if you look, there's still a ton of pictures of we call them the boys up on the wall and everything. Like, poor Benny, I feel kind of feels like we need to maybe add some new, but, like, Boomer and PJ still kind of are all over. When we don't and we don't have kids, so they're everything to us.
Yeah, it's us too.
And, so, I mean, I think finding ways to memorialize them, what does that look like? We also don't like, one of the things I was doing a pet loss group for a while, and one of the ladies came in and she said she wrote an obituary for her cat. And I loved that idea because, like, why not? We do this for people, but they play such a valuable role in our life. Why not write an obituary? And then also find people that you can talk to and connect with. I joined a ton of Facebook groups right away. Some of them were really depressing and overwhelming, to be honest. And so I always tell people join them and then unfollow them so you can go back into them when you feel like you want to read it. Otherwise, it's going to like some of these groups have 20,000 people in them. And I went to two animal mediums. Like I was like searching because we think that there's these things that are going to just take away our grief. It doesn't. We just have to feel it. We really need to lean into our grief and sit with our grief. And I think as society, we don't want to, right? We want to avoid grief. We don't want to feel it, especially that sadness. What you talked about, right? You're getting caught up in the coulda, woulda, shouldas, the guilt, the whatever, right? That's what our brains do. Our brain is like Velcro to the bad and Teflon to the good. So we're really good at beating ourselves up. So we're gonna get caught in that guilt. Like we should have known better. I even have a little bit of guilt that I think that we let Boomer go for too long. When I look back at pictures now, and I'm like, oh, he was in rough shape.
We've done that too about Baxter. I look at pictures from a month before and I'm like, he doesn't even look like him. How did I not see that? And maybe it was, and
Mhm,
my brain was says, well, it was just a picture. It was just that one day
mhm.
weird angle, old dog. Yeah.
Yeah, and so sitting with that sadness is what's important because that sadness is what it's about. The guilt is a distraction. The anger is a distraction. It's the sadness that we feel. And so it's about finding ways to sit with that sadness as we don't want to, right? It's hard, but that's really what's so important to do. And I think also one of the things that I want to mention for people, especially if it was a traumatic loss, because I've heard some awful stories of traumas and things that shouldn't have happened that were the cause of the owner and it's so awful and sad. um it's okay to reach out to a therapist and do some trauma work. There is techniques that can help, like progressive counting or EMDR or brain spotting, that can help you process that so you can think of them in their life, not the death. I think so many of us focus on that ending rather than the life. And
You know what's
so if there
interesting?
is
Sorry, go
trauma,
ahead.
do that work.
We were talking about trauma. I thought what was interesting was the 4 or 5 days when he was gone, I was stoic, which I'm not usually calm and quiet. I'm usually the opposite in everything I do. And I remember saying to my wife, I can't remember him. I can't picture him. I can't access memories. I can't remember his smell. I can't. And it was for 4 or 5 days. And I freaked out. And I was researching and reading books and watching podcasts on YouTube and, listening to stuff and just figuring out. And I found out it was completely normal. It was the brain's way of protecting me. But it was, it was so hard. I sat there and I thought, I can't do this. And I want to tell everyone a quick story, based on what you were talking about with your scrapbook. Baxter passed away October 28th, 2024, and I have taken thousands of photos of him and Sophie, and I was looking at all the photos and wanting to relive it, and I realized I don't where's his puppy photos? Where are his younger days? So I freaked out. I went through the garage. My wife was like, "Are you okay? I don't think you're okay." I'm, like, pulling apart the garage. I found an old laptop. It was completely dead. I ordered, a cord for that laptop. I had to use AI to help me figure it out. Cord shows up, it's dead. I ordered a new battery from eBay, wouldn't work. My wife's like, "Hey, you're not well, like, what's going on?" I said, "No, no, no, there's a secret there's something in this laptop, I need it." December 7th, which is the day before my birthday, I went to the Apple store 30 minutes before they closed. I walked up to the Genius Bar, I said, "Hey, my dog died, and I'm not doing well. And I feel like all of his puppy photos and videos are on this computer, and it's old and it's completely dead. What can I do?" And he's like, "There's nothing we can do." I said, "I will do anything. Whatever it takes, I will do anything. If you want me to buy something, I'll buy it, like whatever it takes." Goes back, takes it in the back, comes back, store's getting ready to close. He had like unscrewed everything, got this chip reader thing, and he goes, I have a photos file. Do you want it?" And I said, "Yeah." So I brought my current laptop. He transferred it over. It was every photo from the day I rescued Baxter, the day he came home. It was like I felt like I hit the lottery that day. And I had all of these photos and videos. And it was interesting because it was that moment, 5 weeks after, 6 weeks after he passed away. I spent the whole night looking at every photo, and I had like 1,000 memories rush back that were gone. Things I didn't remember, things I didn't know. It was probably one of the, best nights of my life through a hard time was because it was like and, had I not been feeling that way, that laptop may have just been donated at some point. I don't know what would have happened, but, sort of like your scrapbooks, it was, like, so important to me. So now what I'm doing is every person I know or have known over the last couple months, they've gotten messages from me, "Hi, we spent time together. We went to the dog beach together in 19. If you have any photos from that day, please send them to me. And I have gotten so many photos and videos of him that I never saw. So many moments, and I'm like piecing together his life because it's very hard to remember the day to day with our pets. We remember the final 6 months because I watched him fighting for his life and we were really, really locked in. But, you know, he was 12 and a half when he died. You don't remember, the night we gave him a piece of steak when he was 4 years old and it blew his mind and he made that funny face. Then you see the video of it and you're like, oh, God, I never would have remembered that in a million years. So, yeah, it's something that really helps me.
We have all their pictures on a flash drive in a safe. Like, they're backed up because, like, that is my fear of, like, I don't wanna ever lose these things, you know? Because your phone you have so much on your phone, and then your phone dies, what happens then?
Yeah.
And so everything has been backed up and backed up.
It's like, yeah, I mean, you're piecing together a life, and then you look back and you're like, "Wow, at one point I went 3 weeks, I have no photos for a 3-week period. How horrible am I that I spent every second with this guy, and I have no photos of him for 3 weeks? What was wrong with me during those 3 weeks?" So yeah, if you're out there, you got old laptops, go check them out. So, you talked about doing that. What are other things that you being the expert, and I know it's hard, it's different for everyone, but, what are tools, what are just broad recommendations you recommend if someone's watching this and they're really going through grief, whether it happened a week ago or happened 9 months ago, and you're just feeling it? Like, what should we be doing?
Feel it, experience it, sit with it, lean into it, look at those pictures, be reminded, write down some of these memories because you know what? Memories change, they're malleable, they can change by up to 50% in a year. Write them down, write down these memories. I honestly think we talk so much about the boys because we have Benny who's 15 months, and he's a wild Boston Terrier, and he's got, like, little traits. He does little things that are like PJ, he does little things that are like Boomer, and it triggers we talk about them all the time. Talk about them. Find people that will listen, that will ask you, that get it, that understand it. Whether you have to join an online group, there's so many pet loss groups available in person or virtual that you can join. So many of them are free. Even the vet, I'm sure you know even more about this. A lot of the vet schools have like these hotlines you can call to talk to somebody who gets it. I find a lot of comfort in reading. I've read a lot of really good books that just help normalize and understanding what you're feeling is normal and it's okay to be feeling whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, that's well said. Um, I'm gonna ask you one more question about death. So I am not a religious person. I wouldn't say I'm not spiritual. I see a Buddha behind you. I've got one behind me. Maybe hard to see. Yeah, kind of hard to see. I've got a Buddha statue that's been with me for a long time behind me. Um, I maybe don't know how I feel about death, afterlife, energy, presence. And then it was the week of Thanksgiving. My best friend and his wife came out to visit us and knew I was going through a tough time. And he and I went for a walk. And I live in Newport Beach, California, and we're walking. He's like, "How are you, man?" And I said, "You know, I really kind of didn't buy this bullshit." Those are my exact words, but I kind of was hoping I'd get a sign from Baxter, and I never got one. So, I said, "I know that's weird," and he was like, "I've never in a million years, I never would have thought you'd say that." I'm like, "I know, never." And I said, "But I'm really upset by it because I just wanted to know he was okay." I literally traveled for work monthly for years running a company, and um, leaving him was harder than leaving my wife because we could FaceTime, we could text, and I knew I could look at the cameras and he was back at the back door. If I was gone for 6 days, he was there for 6 days. And we're getting ready to cross the street, and we look down, and there's a wet cardboard box. It's for the Baxter Corporation. It says Baxter on it in big letters. Minutes after we were having this conversation, minutes. Now, I'm a big germaphobe. I brought that dripping, wet, disgusting box home, and I have it. And it was like, okay, he reached out to me. Now, I'm telling you this. If you asked me this 10 months ago and you played a clip of me saying this, I'd say, what are you messing with me? 10 months ago, I would have said that. So, how do you recommend people that have a trouble conceptualizing death and energy and that stuff? What do you recommend for that? I mean, obviously, I've done a lot of reading, I've done a lot of listening, but what do you recommend for that when it's still this like weird, I don't even know how to describe it. It's this weird thing I can't figure out.
I think it's the number one question, right? What happens? And I don't think you can do grief work without asking a client that, right? And everybody is so different. I do find sometimes I think the people that have a belief sometimes seem like they're able to process it differently than the people that think that it's just over and it's done, because how sad is that, right? I mean, I worked for hospice. I worked for two different hospices. I've been doing this long enough. I'm trained in something called induced after death communication. I have a spiritual bias. I know I do. The stuff I've heard you can't make up. Like the signs that people have, but for those that don't, if energy can't be created nor destroyed, when I know watching the boys and them taking their final breath and they leave, that energy goes somewhere. It stays with us. And so I for those of the people that struggle with that, like what happens? Well, what do you think happens to that energy? And so if it's all around us, can that bring you comfort? And if not, I think that's a hard thing to figure out is I know Kevin had both nights that the boys died, he had extremely vivid visitation dreams from both of them. Like amazing dreams that I would love to have, but I haven't. I just I'm looking at the pictures of the boys over there right now. And you just I think you have to figure out what feels right for you. Read. Look at it. I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school my whole life. My husband gave me a book called Journey of Souls. It's about reincarnation. It blew my mind and changed everything I believe. And so read stuff, look into it, see what feels, there's an author, I think her name is Karen Anderson. She talks a lot about like your soul pet. And I think that's what Baxter was for you, right? He was your soul pet. Like we have lots of pets in our life and but some just sit differently and it
Yeah.
feels different.
I mean,
And that's our soul pet. And so like reading a book like that was helpful. And she talks about like how they can come through to you when they are. And I think you just have to stay open. Look at you. You stumbled across this like box, right? Like you wanted it so bad, but it had to be, like, right in your face for you to be like, "There's your
who
sign."
knows what else I may have walked by. It's like
Exactly.
we have our puppy Cosmo. We took him to the beach for the first time when, this was when he was 14, 15 weeks old. And we're at Baxter's favorite beach. It's a bright, sunny day. I took a photo with my nice camera. And when I get home, put it in, there's like a rainbow, like a cracked rainbow in the sky. And I looked at my wife and she's like, dude, I was like, I know, that's wild. If you would have asked me, do I believe that a couple months ago, I would have said no. And then, there it is. It's like he was like, hey, Cosmo, welcome to my beach. I'm here. Those are the last words I said to Baxter, where I will find you. Which, again, for me and the type of person I am, I promise you all, when I think about death, I think lights out, I'm gone. And then Baxter died, and I'm like, well, you know what? Do I want to change my mind because I want to believe I'll see him, I'll see other people that I'll end up losing? I don't know. But I'm with you. You got to be open to it. I literally yesterday listened to an hour-long podcast on reincarnation. And by the way, on the Love Baxter site, go to the top under resources. We have a belief section, and you can read all kinds of stuff, what different religions say about the pet afterlife, all of that stuff. So check it out. I mean, what you do is amazing. I'm
Thank you.
new to this space, been in this space working for about 7 months. And that's what Love Baxter is and what it will continue to be. It will be to shine a light on these people that really help us in our darkest days because, you know, these two dogs, Sophie and Baxter, my life had no meaning before them. Zero. My wife's wedding vows opened up with her saying, I know you love the dogs more than me, and that's what I love most about you. And my wedding vows opened with, I promise to love you more than anything, or in the worst case scenario, tied with the dogs. That's how both of our wedding vows opened. Both of us knew that those dogs were my life, no matter what. So, the fact that Baxter's gone and Sophie At 15, I can hear her stomping around upstairs right now. And by the way, just like PJ, she is just such a stubborn little shit. She is just like, "Give me this right now." If we're, like, laying on the couch and she wants to go outside and, she'll, like, tap the couch, if you don't jump up to attention within a tenth of a second, she gets up and, like, pushes it with her 26-pound body. Just such a when we go for walks, if we wanna go left and she wants to go right, I will pull you with the force of 10,000 suns to the right. And, I'm going to miss her when she's gone because, she was there before Baxter, before my wife, after Baxter. I don't know how to live without Sophie. I really don't. So, a lot of things in this book are helpful, even for a guy like me who's a tech entrepreneur, who's had a lot of success in business, who's had a lot of success in life, who's overcome a lot of stuff. And then, one of the billion, 2 billion dogs that are on this planet, that doesn't matter to anyone else that's not in this house, he dies and my life is crumbling because of it. So, really appreciate you and what you do and what you did with this book. Like I said, I'm going to link to this. I think everyone should read it. My wife's almost done with it. I told her, don't tell me anything. I just started it.
Well, you need to read Kirby Kay's chapter because it's about rainbows.
Okay, I will.
So make sure you read that.
Well, of course. Well, how can people find you? How can people stay in touch with you and all of that?
So follow Center for Informed Grief. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Grief in Action on TikTok, working on some additional things. We're about to start our own podcast called Grief in Action that hopefully will be launching in September. So just real helping people understand that there is things you can do to help yourself when you're grieving. It feels like you can't, but there is action steps, and so that's really what that podcast is going to be all about. Each week will be a different tool to be able to help you on your grief journey.
I love that. And yeah, we'll link to all that in the show notes. And like I said at the top, follow along with Love Baxter. This is how I honor him. I am building the world's largest website. We've got about 3,000 pages now. We have a directory with over almost 300 people have signed up. We haven't even been up a month. Um, Worked in veterinary medicine for years. I didn't know about veterinary social workers. I didn't know about pet death doulas. I didn't, even though I'm a photographer and enjoy doing it, I don't have family photos because I didn't think of it. So there's so many things we think we know, but we don't. And this website's great. The way it's built helps you kind of like flow through wherever you're at in life with your pet, senior pets, pets with chronic illness, dealing with grief. You'll get to connect with people like Kelly. So yeah, follow along, lovebaxter.com, at Love Baxter Co. on most social platforms. And yeah, Kelly, thank you so much for everything you do. Today's talk was helpful for me, and I hope it was helpful for everyone watching.
Well, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing because this is such a needed thing. And so I'm just grateful that you're able to get this out, especially with senior dogs. There's not anything out there about that. So thank
No,
you.
we're working with two amazing senior dog veterinarians from Senior Dog Revolution and the Senior Dog Veterinary Society and Pet Loss Community. So we're partnering up because, yeah, I mean, half of the content on our site's about senior dogs and pets with chronic illnesses, no matter what age they are. Because, yeah, not as you all know, senior dog life is not for the weak-hearted. It is every day is hard, but it's also great. I don't know how to explain that, but every day with Sophie is so funny and great, but hard. Well,
Thank you.
thank you all.